Hello everyone and welcome to another top 5 records video and another one on which I'm going to talk about sound quality on one hand, but the intentions of the artist and mix on the other end, which will differ with different mixes and pressings. So I'm going to talk about one of my favorite all-time albums, so it's very personal. Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. And this is an album I heard for the first time when I was about 14 or 15 years old. A friend of mine sent me a CD box with 3 albums of his Highway 61 Revisited, Bring It All Back Home, and this one, Blonde on Blonde. So I heard Blonde on CD for the first time, and that was my reference point. Now, a couple of years ago when I got into vinyl collecting, I was just thrilled when I got Blonde on vinyl for the first time by a friend of mine. I got a early 70s vinyl, Dutch vinyl, and for me the step to vinyl was very interesting because I thought that on the Dutch vinyl, it became more livelier, which in the case of Bob Dylan's music I really appreciated. Now I don't have that pressing anymore because I traded it recently. I traded it with a friend of mine for this one and some other stuff. This is the Mofi Sound Lab 45 RPM. Bob Dylan's masterpiece on 3 discs in 45 RPM. Now, why did I want to get this one so bad? Because on forums like the Steve Helfman forum, a lot of people say that this must be the best sounding stereo version of this album. And that is interesting because I have an American version here to compare it to, an American stereo version. But I also have 2 other versions. Now, and those are 2 mono versions. What I'm holding here is a first UK mono pressing from 1966. This is, by the way, written on the sleeve, not on the album cover itself. And the 2010 mono pressing. And this is an interesting situation with Bob Dylan. This, by the way, is the US stereo one. This is an interesting situation with this album because although the sound quality of this is incredible, I mean, you hear so much detail, the stereoscape, the air of the instruments is all there. Very high definition of detail, but it doesn't do it for me. Now, why? First of all, this particular Mofi pressing, sounds a bit too sterile. I'm not sure what's going on here because it comes from the digital age. Perhaps the digital step has something to do with that, but there are Mofi releases in which I do not have a problem with the digital step. Perhaps in this case it is the digital step, but emotionally I tend to lean a bit more to this one. Perhaps it also has to do with some favoritism, the US stereo one, with some favoritism towards a slightly grittier sound, a little more analog, but the voice just sounds a bit warmer. But basically, what makes all this uninteresting to me is this mono version. And we have to dive into the history of this album. When Bob Dylan recorded this in Nashville, and afterwards, when he started mixing it, he was there with the mono mix. He took great care of the mono mix. And that is different with this stereo version. And to me, in the world of mono and stereo, I think the differences between these 2 records are amongst the most extreme. Here's why. On this album, the stereo mix, you hear a lot of air. Bob Dylan's voice sounds airy, his harmonica even sounds airy, and that makes not for one of his best harmonica accomplishments. The mono mix, on the other hand, has a more intimate quality. The voice is fuller, the instruments are more packed together, and the harmonica, perhaps it's more equalized, that might also be the case, but because of the equalizing on the harmonica, it sounds more fitting to the story, it sounds more as if it's part of the narrative of the stories he's telling, and it makes it complete. Now, what does that do to the songs? In this case, it changes the world. I was used to the stereo version, but the first time I heard the mono version, I was immediately drawn into it, and the songs start to make sense. The stereo version sounds to me as if Bob Dylan from time to time, or overall even, is cynical in tone. Like he's not sincere in his stories, like he's distancing himself from the subjects he's singing about. And that is odd, because he's singing about the Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, for example, is a very intimate song. Visions of Joanna is a very intimate song. I Want You is a very intimate song. Even when he's angry, like in Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat, I mean, he is sincerely angry, just like a woman. Very sincere song. But they all sound a bit cynical and like he's distancing himself. While here in the mono, with his voice being truly taken care of and getting the right treatment, it is much more of a sincere and fragile love song. He is not the cynical hipster distancing himself. He is a fragile poet who is searching his soul and the soul of his partners. And that makes it for such a more heartbreaking emotional album. I mean, it's just not a matter of audiophile comparison and having fun while doing that. No. This clearly makes for a different record, a different listening experience, and a different emotional response. It changes the narrative of the song because the intention sounds different. It's obvious when you take a look at these mono versions. Bob Dylan took care of a good mono mix which fitted the stories he was trying to tell. The stereo one just doesn't do that, and you can come with a very detailed, precise version of the record, like the Mobile Fidelity one, if it does not contain the essence of the album, which for me is the mono one. It just doesn't do this. Sorry about that. Now, I'm very curious, what do you guys think? Should we listen to it in mono, in stereo, or what's just your favorite pressing of this album? Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.